If you search, "What is Solana?" on YouTube, you'll find 50 price predictions, 3 videos presenting historical proof, and plenty of other interviews. There isn't a single good video that clearly summarizes what Solana has to offer. We'll go over what Solana is, some of the crazy unique technological improvements they have seen over Ethereum, and we'll get into some of the tokenomics that you can use to make a price prediction in this video. So, let's talk about why Solana is fantastic and who designed it before we get into the technical details. The first white paper was written by Anatoly Yakovenko. One thing you should know about him is that he's a clever guy who spent a decade at Qualcomm. I tried reading the white paper and found it to be pretty technical with only a few readable phrases here and there. However, his blockchain is named after a beach, Solana Beach, that he adored. Let's look at why the price of Solana has risen so dramatically in recent months. To begin with, Solana has a block time of 400 milliseconds, which is extremely rapid when compared to Ethereum's block time of 10 seconds or Bitcoin's block duration of 10 minutes. Solana claims to be able to process up to 710 transactions per second, which is 30 times more than Visa can currently manage. Although they've never been able to go above 50,000, it doesn't mean that they can't achieve 710,000. It simply means they haven't tried. So the Solana network is quick, massive, and inexpensive. With transaction fees of roughly 1/100th of a penny is the equivalent to the Matic network. So let's look at what makes them so quick and affordable. The consensus mechanism, which is a fancy way of explaining how everyone agrees on what the blockchain should be, is the first thing we must describe. They don't employ proof of work, and proof of stake isn't used at all. In fact, Anatoly's white paper described a new approach dubbed proof of history. It's essentially proof of stake, but with the addition of a time variable. Proof of history is a method of incorporating time into blockchain data rather than a consensus process. We use timestamps to set specific date and time on the blocks, and we do this to allow for very rapid validator sequencing so that they know what order to submit blocks in without having to communicate back and forth. Other blockchains face a significant challenge in that they must agree on a timeline. We take this for granted, but computers must continually inquire what time it is because they can't look at their phone or even the sun to figure out time. On the other blockchain, the nodes, which is a fancy word for computers on the network, must communicate back and forth until they agree on a time before submitting a block. This chatter can eat up a lot of time in the digital world. Solana solves this problem by having everyone timestamp their blocks and using cryptographic evidence rather than waiting for everyone to agree on the time. Basically, after the event, we may agree on how the data in the block should be organized. We don't need to wait for other validators to review and approve our work. So let's take a look at one of the most well-known whiteboard crypto stories. Consider the following scenario. If you want everyone in your family to write you a letter, and you want them to do it one by one, you must first write every one letter, and then they must send you all of their letters. Both of your letters have been in the mail for an extended period of time. What if you simply told them, "Hey, send me a letter at 4 p.m. on January 3rd, the next time you saw them"? You'll know it's coming in that manner. You won't have to waste time or resources asking them to. To cut a long story short, you could schedule your uncle's letter for January 3rd, your aunt's letter for January 4th, your cousin's letter for January 5th, and your grandmother's letter for January 6th. We like to read these letters in a chronological sequence, but the problem is that they're all sent by various companies, such as UPS and FedEx. They can take various amounts of time, and your uncle is on a business trip, so he's thousands of miles away. It's possible that if they all send their letters on the same day, they won't arrive in the exact order they're supposed to. They did, however, include the time they submitted their letters in the letter so that you can categorize them when you receive them. Essentially, proof of history permits nodes to continue throwing blocks at us indefinitely, and because some people have quicker internet than others, we may presume they're telling the truth about their sending date and then arrange and add them to the blockchain whenever we receive them. Our aunt, uncle, cousin, and grandmother, by the way, were all just separate people delivered in blocks in this comparison. We can use math to determine that our uncle's letter was written on January 3rd. Another noteworthy feature of Solana is that 25 blocks are being authenticated by 25 users at the same time. This is how they're able to outperform Visa by such a wide margin. Speaking of how they're related to proof of stake, one aspect of Solana that I personally like was that there's no prerequisites to being a validator. To put it in perspective, in Ethereum 2.0, you needed around 32 Ether, which is roughly $100,000. To vote each day on Solana, you only need to hold a tiny quantity of the coin and pay a charge. However, there is a catch. The voting fee is 1 Solana every day, or roughly $70,000 per year, which seems absurd, but almost 1,000 people are doing it right now. Next, we're going to discuss something that no other major blockchain has attempted. It's known as sea level. Technically, this is the only catchy phrase for the fact that validation can perform smart contract code in parallel. Allow me to explain it to you in layman terms if you're not a developer. Assume you have to wash the dishes, change your clothes, and sweep the floor. Because there is only one human, each of these tasks would have to be completed in order. This is referred to as a series task, as each task is completed one after the other. The world parallel in Solana means you can do things all at once, so you can make 2 additional duplicates of yourself and do the dishes, switch the laundry, and sweep the floor at the same time. That is basically what Solana is capable of. They are able to execute their smart contracts. Another thing I observed on their website was this quote, which highlights how they're bottlenecked by hardware rather than software or ideas. Our network's computing capability will double every time NVIDIA doubles the number of SIMD lanes. It will be fascinating to observe how Bitcoin and Ethereum deal with the supercomputers that we will have in 10 to 50 years. Before we go into Sol tokenomics, it is important to note that Solana smart contracts are fundamentally different from Ethereum's. Ethereum runs its Solidity code on a virtual computer, whereas Solana runs on the Rust programming language. Rust is a very low-level language, which means it's a lot more powerful, but it also takes more time to learn. One disadvantage is that unlike many other blockchains, developers cannot simply copy and paste their Ethereum dApps and projects. Everything has to be coded from the ground up. They will, however, be more powerful than Ethereum smart contracts. Finally, we'll look into tokenomics. The Sol coin is the currency of the Solana network, and is utilized for transaction fees and across the blockchain ecosystem. Solana is both inflationary and deflationary as far as I can determine. It's deflationary because for a long time, all transaction fees were burned 100% of the time, but now just around half of them are. However, it is also inflationary because they recently approved an inflation schedule in which staking incentives are paid out roughly 8%, but are reduced by a small percentage every few days until the ultimate staking rewards reach 1.5% in 10 years. In terms of total supply, they started with roughly 500 million tokens and will continue to grow as proof-of-stake incentives are earned. Additionally, there were 4 private investment rounds before their original ICO on the topic of early distribution. During those 4 funding rounds in their initial coin offering, they sold roughly 36% of their supply at a relatively cheap price. They were selling these for 25 cents each, but the price has since risen to $200. Another 13% of tokens went to the project's creators, and a 10% to the Solana Foundation, and the remaining 39% was used to fund community initiatives, which are also managed by the Foundation. One strange thing I discovered was that there was a Solana wallet with 13 million tokens in it, and no one knew why, so they just burned them all. Another point of mentioning is that in December of 2020, Solana was down for almost 6 hours, and to be honest, this is concerning because a decentralized system should never fail. It means that everyone on the network was affected by the same bug. However, the pricing was unaffected by the situation. No one appears to have panicked as a result of the news. Finally, Solana is still in beta, which you should be aware of if you're an investor or want to create a dApp for them. But that's going to conclude our video. Thank you guys so much for watching. We hope you found this video both entertaining and educational, and we sincerely hope that you took away something from this video.